Hello, Paul.
Hi Curtis, how you doing?
Good and you. Let me just turn you up. You sound very faint. There we go. That's better.
My Wi-Fi just picked the perfect time to completely shut down, so that's great.
Have you cut your hair?
No, I haven't. It's just pulled back very tightly right now. Like you,
Ah,
I'm rocking the locks at the moment.
let's. Wow.
It's it's my lockdown locks,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I haven't been in public with these yet, but yeah.
Thanks, Angie. Yeah, no, I like the longer hair on you. It looks good.
Oh, thanks. And on you,
Thank
perfectly
you.
groomed as ever.
It's still trying to grow, but yeah, I cut it all off, so. So, Paul, you have a very successful podcast where you discuss all kinds of things, Egyptology, archaeology, ancient religions, things like that.
Hmm.
So it was called the Profane Egyptologist, and now it's
Yeah.
called Profane Humanities. Why the change and where did this come about?
Yeah, good question. Thanks. So it started out, I wanted to start a podcast and talk to lots of various people in the field. And then I realized as I was going along that actually a lot of the people I want to talk to aren't Egyptologists. They might be archaeologists. They might be working in the environmental sector, various other things. A lot of actors, a lot of actor friends who are working on historical projects and things like that. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to mislead the audience or set their expectations wrong. And so I
Mhm.
decided I would, as people are saying hi, hi, I decided I would rename and call it Profane Humanities because that kind of sums up everything that I want to cover, including like environmental issues and broader archaeological stuff and historical stuff and pop culture and film and television, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting podcast. I mean, I've seen some of your guests.
Thanks.
I saw I heard, I mean, not saw, heard the interview you did with Chris Norton, and a couple others. So it's really interesting stuff that you guys discuss. Now,
Thank
a
you.
question that I had the first time I ever saw the name of your podcast, I think it was like a year ago,
Yeah.
and I saw Profane Egyptologist. Now, do you use profanity?
Every goddamn day. But no, it's the name came from the book, my book, Profane Egyptologists, which was back in my PhD when I was at UCL. I was studying communities, Kemetic communities, and Reconstructionists and revivalists and eclectic pagans and Wiccans, and basically people who were using ancient Egyptian religion today, right now.
Mhm.
And I thought I was reading the Book of Set, which is a book put out by the head of the Temple of Set, because I was studying this kind of offshoot of the Church of Satan at the time as well, who were focused around the Egyptian god Seth or Sutek, and
I see
they
Angie
had
likes
this.
that.
um, and really, they're kind of very interesting people, very interesting group. It didn't end up studying them closely in the PhD itself, but in the introduction to the Book of Set, there was the line that essentially that these profane Egyptologists won't take this stuff seriously, and I thought that's perfect because I'm taking this stuff seriously. So I decided to
Exactly.
use that term as the title, and it just kind of stuck. Uh, and yeah, and then I named I was on a couple of interviews and people referred to me as the profane Egyptologist, and I was like, that's kind of interesting. I think I might use that, and that's how that came about, basically. So other people
Mhm.
labeled me with it, and I stuck with it for a while.
Well, you know what? If people refer to you as something, I think that's a good sign.
Exactly right. Yeah, embrace it. That's what
Because
I say.
I first read that title and I thought, wow, okay, this is going to be cool. The Egyptologist is going to be like swearing the whole time.
I was on an
Like Gordon
interview
Ramsay of
recently.
Egyptology.
I was on an interview recently with the for the Park Service in the United States, and they do like archaeology and this archaeology show. And I was asked if I could keep it clean, and I dropped an F-bomb in the first 5 minutes. So
Oh,
it's fair to say that sometimes my uncouth upbringing catches up with me. But you know, I try.
that's the
I
one
try.
thing about Egyptologists that I think people get wrong a lot of the time. They think that we're very boring. We have no
Yeah.
life, and we just sit there with a book. And I had a video chat, not live, but I had a video chat a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine who's also an Egyptologist in the UK. And I was so shocked at how much we were swearing. I was like, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, we Egyptologists a pretty
yeah,
rowdy crowd, you know, like most of my academic year were pretty rowdy, were pretty lively, and we had some good times.
exactly. So tell me, how exactly did you get involved, become interested in archaeology, Egyptology, all of all of that good stuff?
Well, basically, it came from exposure to pop culture as a kid, for the most part, and I remember that I'm going to be mirroring every movement of your hair, by the way, because you'll remind me that my hair's out of control right now. I'm waiting to get a haircut. Um, so so oh, hi Sophia. I know Sophia. Um,
Oh,
so
Zizan, hi. No?
yeah, how you
Yeah.
doing? Been a long time, too long. Um,
We
yeah,
actually,
long story
Sophia
short,
and I spoke about you a few days ago.
oh really? Oh, ooh,
Yeah.
all good, I hope.
She had very nice things to say about you. She's lovely. So.
Oh, it's mutual. It's mutual. The love is mutual. Um, Lovely to see you too, Sophia. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, Egyptology. So, long story short, it was pop culture. I was really into mythology and gods and things like that as a kid. And I used to play role-playing games when I was a teenager, and I followed this Egyptian pantheon, and I got more and more into it, reading about these kind of fictional, but based on factual Egyptian kind of pantheons and
Right.
deities. And then I just became kind of obsessed over the years, and I got into, you know, I think it was like a mixture of things like Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider and The Mummy, and it just all fed
Mhm.
into this pre-existing fascination, you know?
Yeah. I mean, The Mummy was kind of the movie that got me interested in Egyptology. Um,
Right on.
was there something specific when you were a kid? I mean, I love hearing that you got interested when you were younger because I find a lot of Egyptologists develop this from their youth.
Mm.
Um, so was there something like a movie or something very specific that sticks out to you when you think back of how you started with this?
I had a teacher called Miss Farmer when I was in primary school, and she was just the sweetest, most eccentric woman. She dressed like a witch, and she was just this lovely, lovely woman. And she taught us about Egypt when we were about 7. And I remember going on a museum trip, and I
Oh,
remember
wow.
that night having very vivid nightmares about being in the museum and chased by a mummy. And I think I think the obsession started there. It was this really intense kind of encounter that just stuck in my mind. And after that, like everything, every time that Egypt was present in something, I latched onto it. So like there was a game when I was a kid, and this was, I mean, we're talking old school video games. We're talking the Commodore 64, and it was the. Do you remember Count Duckula, the cartoon Count Duckula from
Yes, I love.
Danger Mouse? Right.
Hmm.
There was a video game called No Sax Please We're Egyptian, and you had to
Oh,
play Count Duckula. And it was this platforming game based in like Egyptian temples and pyramids, and I was hooked on that when I was little. I really loved that game, and I
I
swear to
mean,
God,
Count
it was.
Dracula and Egypt. I mean, how does that go together?
Uh, I mean, look hard enough and you can find a connection between Egypt and anything, right? That's the way it works.
Exactly, exactly. Do you ever find yourself sitting and then someone will say talk about something and you go, oh, the Egyptians started that, or the Egyptians invented that, or and they're like, oh yeah, of course they did. I see you frozen. Oh no. Paul? Mm, okay, sorry. Ah, there you are. Sorry, you froze for a second. Hi.
Yeah, technical issues. Yes. Well, the
I actually had
Egyptians.
to I had to message my Wi-Fi company before we did the talk to say like, listen, please, I need Wi-Fi. You know, like,
I love the backdrop you've got there. So yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi crapped out for a second.
yeah, that's okay. What were we saying?
Egyptians inventing things.
Yes, and do you ever find yourself like saying, "Hi, Troy"?
Hi,
Do you ever
Troy.
find yourself saying someone will talk about something and go, "Oh, well, you know, the Egyptians started that, or the Egyptians invented that," and they look at you like, "Yeah, sure."
Yes. Yeah, definitely. That does happen as an archaeologist as well. Like you'll be like, oh, you know that these are all based on Roman aqueducts, or you know that these things are based on the Egyptian idea. It comes up mostly in culture and religion, I find. So you'll be talking about there'll be some kind of cultural or religious um, thing, be it a ritual or a statue or something or other. And I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, that's clearly been inspired by something that's been inspired by Egypt. Like that's been inspired by, um, a statue of Isis, or that's a ritual that's come from this particular time and place. And, you know, yeah, so it's definitely the case with like cultural things more than technological things. But obviously the Egyptians had their own kind of technologies. So,
Exactly, exactly.
oh hey, thanks for joining us.
Hello, yes, Angie seems to be loving this chat.
I can't imagine why.
So, you also are an archaeologist. So, can you tell me a little more about some of your experience in archaeology? Where have you dug? Where have you
Yeah,
dug? Where have you excavated is the correct word. What
yeah,
was like the
absolutely.
one point where,
So most of my digging career wasn't in Egypt actually, or hasn't been to date. I learned to dig in the UK. I learned to dig in rescue archaeology. So that involved kind of going around a lot of sites that were supposed to be built and doing a huge survey of the entire site and trying to figure out, is there anything here? Is there anything Roman here we want to preserve usually? Is there anything of particular significance to anyone underneath this surface that hasn't been surveyed? So that's where I cut my teeth in archaeology, and I got to visit a few digs in other places like Cyprus, for instance, in Greece, and yeah, and America actually. But I've not had a chance to dig in Egypt. I've been to Egypt several times, and I've done all the tours and been in and over pyramids and temples and all kinds of things. But as I was as I was graduating from the PhD, that's basically at the same time the Arab Spring was happening.
yeah.
So you couldn't go and dig in Egypt at the time. They'd frozen all the permits, and a lot of the Egyptologists had left and actually come back to Britain and Europe at the time. So hi.
Hi, Padmavati. Padmavati. Hi.
So yeah, so a lot of the digging I was doing was here actually, and it's funny because I didn't study British archaeology really at all, and I've learnt more about it since than I knew when I went into the field.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot, doing that. So
If you could excavate somewhere in Egypt, like where would you like to start excavating if you could?
Homopolis Magna,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, Homopolis.
That's where they found the Nama palette.
Well, it's one of those really ancient sites, and you know,
Pre-dynastic, yeah.
It's the site of the 8 primordials, who are very, very little known as Egyptian deities go. You know, the 8 primordials were they emerged from chaos. One of those primordials was Amun, of course, who seemed to be the creator god, and there were the other primordials, Kek and Kekit, Het and Hehit, Amun, Amunit, and
Nefertem, I
they
believe.
came ahead. What's that? Sorry.
Nefertem, I believe he's also one of the ones who
One of the
emerged
8
from the.
primordials. From the primordial soup. So you have these kind of 4 pairs of very mysterious characters. But one of the main reasons I think Hermopolis is really exciting for me is that it was the temple to Thoth, Tahuti, the god of knowledge. And I can't help but feel that anyone who was working there would have been an excellent scribe. So really it's about what knowledge could you uncover at that area, given that it's a temple that's dedicated to preserving knowledge. Unfortunately, it's kind of it's getting a bit desperate there because the water table is pretty high at that site in Egypt right now. So I don't know how long we have left really to get into that place to actually dig it.
Well, you know, with the new dam in Ethiopia, the levels should go lower. So
Yeah, here's hoping.
maybe.
Maybe, yeah,
Not
maybe.
hoping.
Who knows? Who knows, man? I don't know. I don't know.
Anita, hi Anita, thanks for joining.
Hi there.
I haven't seen Anita since I was in Vienna, so hi. So you were talking about scribes. I know that you have 2 books out.
Yes.
Yes, and I believe you are working on another one. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. I'm always working on at least 2 books. So one I'm pitching at the moment is I can't reveal too much just because it's very the pitch is kind of secret and it's with a publisher. But it has to do with mythology, modern mythology, and psychology. And yeah, you could. It's a very pragmatic book. It's a book full of application using mythology. So I'll let you kind of fill in the blanks there for now, but hopefully that will be greenlit very soon, and then I will disappear into a hole so that I can write.
Just writing away.
That's pretty much, yeah. When I get onto a project, I tend to just get completely absorbed by it, and I'll throw myself into it. And you have to, because it's obsession and passion that gives you breakthroughs. You know, that really exactly it drives you. So yeah, so hopefully that'll be the case. But even if it isn't, I've got ideas for several more books that I want to pitch. 2 of which are very specifically focused on Egyptology. So yeah, so that's all exciting. But and this is whilst I'm writing new episodes for the podcast as well, because I want to expand it out so that it's not just interview. I like doing interviews, but I want to be able to do more kind of creative,
Like
written.
research, yeah.
Yeah.
Something research driven, yeah.
Mm.
That's
Exactly.
very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. I mean, I have been asked by a friend of mine, her name's Brenda Gibbons, to do these short videos on French Egyptology, specifically like old explorers,
Cool.
where I just sit down and talk into a camera, and that's totally not what I do. So it's been very interesting.
It's
So
a
it's
very
good to
funny thing,
expand.
isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Just sitting and talking to camera, it feels so unnatural without someone on the other side of it. But you can always picture that the camera is one of your friends and pretend you're talking to one of your friends.
I can try that, but my friends are not interested really in much Egyptology.
Okay, never mind.
But let me just quickly say hi, Juan Paulo, and then Tharwat is joining us. Hi, Tharwat. He's in Luxor.
Hi, hi. Thawat's in Luxor.
Actually, this head of Nefertim here, I actually got from Tharwat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
He
awesome.
has a store and has these amazing, amazing replicas.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So you've got the book coming out. You're expanding the podcast,
Yeah.
is there anything else that you are doing? Are you planning on just taking it slowly, or?
I mean, I take a million things slowly, or I do one thing at a million miles an hour. You know, it depends on what's happening. So at some point, I will finish a documentary I started years ago, which was about Cleopatra's Needle. Uh, we
Okay.
uh, we tried to crowdfund it. We were interested in the preservation of Cleopatra's Needle, which is obviously the obelisk uh, on the embankment, Thames Embankment. And
Yes.
there had been some reports several years ago that the state of the stone was being negatively affected by sulfur dioxide pollution, acid deposition from acid rain, and various other things.
Yes.
And part of the problem with the type of granite that it is that salt crystals form under the surface of the stone. Those
And
salt
that's
crystals
right.
obviously expand, exactly, the surface flakes, and we start to lose the quality of the hieroglyphs. And I think that would be a real tragedy, given that, you know, if something is thousands of years old, least we can do really is at least cut the trees back around it so it's not covered in moisture all the time, you know, because that it's small things
Advance the
like that.
program. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so yeah, at some point we will finish that documentary, and I think we're going to go grassroots with that process. I'm always working on several projects at once. So, but mostly I'm trying to focus back on the podcast and the books at the moment,
Yeah.
and see if I can get those going. But obviously, like I run my own business, like so I'm very busy basically.
I know you do media coaching. I mentioned that at the start before you came onto the
Oh, thank you,
chat that you do
thank
media
you.
coaching. So,
Yeah.
and I see Nigel was advertising that. So, how does this media coaching actually work?
So how it works at the moment is obviously distance learning because of the way that COVID and social distance has changed everything. But what it started out as was I was working like yourself. I've worked in film, and I spent a few years working exclusively in film to the point where I started out as a runner. I already had my PhD at this point, but I started out as a runner on set and worked my way up through various stages until I was writing and producing. And then I ended up working as a producer for a corporate financial TV channel. And basically, this was a private TV channel for millionaire and billionaire investors for this company. They would get all the financial news, and I was producing, directing, and editing all of that, and kind of kicking out the newsreels and the films and stuff like that. And I just kind of fell into that. And what that did was that gave me a few skills that I took forward back into archaeology. So when I started presenting again, I realized I'd been coaching all of these finance experts on how to be on camera. And I thought, well, given that I've been trained as a presenter at this stage and I've been on camera for a decade, um, I might as well share these skills out with some of the people who are kind of new to it, because it was back when I started in media, there weren't many Egyptologists and archaeologists. There were a few big names, and then there was myself and a few people who were kind of the same kind of peer group, like Chris Norton and I are of a very similar peer group, you know, age-wise and class-wise. And we were kind of coming out at the same time, getting into the media stuff, and there wasn't really anything to help us learn how to do that. So the first shoot I went on, long story short, was a pilot for Sci-Fi Channel for an archaeology show based in America. And I flew out to Hollywood and I shot this pilot, and I had no freaking clue what I was doing. I mean, I had no idea. And I'm on camera and I'm like, oh man, I just looked in the camera and oh God, I'm supposed to be doing, and I thought, I need some training, man. So I went and I got presenter training and I got acting classes and I did all this stuff, and then worked in film for a few years. And I thought, well, coming back out of that into the academic world and trying to establish um, some way of helping pass that knowledge on, that's when I started working with Nigel and doing workshops and stuff like that, and creating online courses. And I've just finished two audio courses for the Listenable app, which I'll send you some links to at some point. And I'm going to do some history courses for them as well, so that should be fun. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's always a lot going on, but that's kind of how that got going and how I ended up doing that. Just kind of
Yeah.
fell sideways into it.
That's great. You know, sometimes things happen, you don't know how it happened, but it just happens for a reason. So
Yeah,
you just have
yeah,
to take it.
exactly, exactly. Just gotta
But
have
like you
faith that
said,
it'll all.
yeah.
Just gotta have faith that it'll all come together in the end. You know.
But like you said, you were involved in film. Like myself, I'm also a filmmaker. At the moment, I am combining the two as well, where
Yeah.
I'm making these documentaries and things about Egyptology.
I've been watching
Have
them. They're great.
really?
They're fantastic. Yeah, you're really good on camera. You're a real natural on camera. You've got
Oh,
this lovely, smooth voice, and yeah, no, they're really fantastic. And what I love about what you're doing is there's just an authenticity to it. Like so much television feels contrived. So many Egypt documentaries that I've been involved in, that I've been a presenter on, have felt very contrived. And what you're
yeah.
doing feels very authentic. It feels very grounded in Egypt, and it feels like you're there with you for along for the journey. That's,
Oh, thank
that's
you.
keep it up, man. That's great.
Thank you so
Great.
much. I appreciate that from you especially.
No, I mean it, man. They're really good. Don't stop.
Thank you. Because, you know, I started wanting to do these Egyptology documentaries. I've been interested in Egyptology since like 6 years old. I was inspired by people like Salima Ikram,
Mhm.
Zahi Hawass, watching them on TV and going, here I am as a 6 year old, and I'm going, wow, look at these people. I want to be doing what they're doing. And then when I got a platform and I was able to make these films, I thought to myself, I would like to be what I looked up to when I
Yep.
was 6, you know,
Yeah.
showing people this is what it's about.
Yep.
And you know, from that, I've come to know people like Salima, like Zahi, like yourself. And it's just such an amazing experience, and it's still going. You know, I'm just starting. I've
Yeah.
just like, I popped out of nowhere and just started doing this. So,
That's the way to do it. It really is, you know. It's just people think they have to wait. People think they have to wait to do this project. People think they have to wait to make a thing or to start. The key is just to start. Like it really is that simple. You've, as you know, you develop the skills as you go. You will learn to get it to the finish line. And if you wait for the perfect moment, if you wait until you've had all this, that, and the other training, you may never start. You may be waiting forever. So there is nothing like starting to rid yourself of the fear or the procrastination of taking that leap, into the next chapter. It really is just about embracing that.
but how did you choose? I mean, I know you're still involved with film, but how did you choose to go, this is the way I'm going to go forward? Instead, like when you were working on film, how did you decide, I'm kind of done with film, or I'm just going to put that on the side and carry on with archaeology?
Yeah, I guess because I was working in a lot of indie film. I was working on a lot of short films, some very good stuff, some very high level stuff. I was really lucky. I worked with some great people. Simon Merrill's from Spartacus and Nightfall was in one of the first films I ever worked on, and
Yeah.
and he's fantastic. He's a really great guy. Um, and I just kind of snowballed. I fell into it sideways from making the documentary, from making the first documentary. So it was like, I want to make this documentary. A friend of mine was already making environmental documentaries, and he said, well, I'll give you a hand. We'll put something together. And so we started and then got invited onto another film, and then that snowballed. And at some stage, I realized I've moved too far from where I wanted to go with this part of my career. I've moved
Yeah.
completely out of history in Egypt into corporate film, and it's killing me. Like, I hated it. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for the skills I got there, and I'm grateful for everything it taught me, and the friends I made along the way. But corporate life is not, I mean, look at me. Corporate life is not for me. That is not what I'm about. And it got to the point where I thought, well, I've taken this job to gain these skills and get a steady paycheck. I've saved a ton of money at this point, and I thought, well, let's just go. Let's just leave. I'm just going to leave and see
Okay.
what I can create. And
Yeah.
that's what happened. So I went from indie film and no money and enjoying what I was doing to corporate, to hating what I was doing, to going, screw this, and just letting it all burn, and deciding to try my luck on my own. And I've been doing that since, to a greater or lesser extent of failure and success.
Exactly. Well, I think you've been doing a great job on Egyptology.
Thank you.
You know, with me, you know, as well as I do, Egyptology doesn't pay very well unless you get involved in like a very good project with a museum or a university or something like that, where they're going to pay you to do that.
Yeah,
If you're just
exactly.
going to go around and study and do things because you love it, you're not going to get paid much. So that's why I still do the filmmaking. I work and do videos for clients. That's what pays the bills, and that's what
Yep.
pays for me to go to Egypt. So it kind of works together.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? No, you're brilliant,
Yeah.
Sophia. But thank you. I appreciate that.
Sophia is brilliant, yeah.
She is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, go check out her work. You've done some fascinating papers.
She did, she has, and she sent me one that she did about Cleopatra, which I
Mm-hmm,
haven't read yet, but I just skimmed through, and I believe it's a different side of Cleopatra, not the fantasy side that the world
mm-hmm,
always
mm-hmm.
is about. So I need to read that completely. Yeah.
Well, so much of what we hear about Cleopatra and learned about Cleopatra is through the accounts of the Romans. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important to try and kind of bypass those prejudices and get back to the incredible woman that she really clearly was. A friend of mine wrote a book called, and definitely check out Sophia's work. A friend of mine wrote a book called Cleopatra's Shadows. She was actually on the show. It was the first episode of the show, I interviewed her. We spoke about Cleopatra's Shadows. Fantastic book. It's about Asinwe and the younger sisters of Cleopatra and them growing up during this very tumultuous period, Ptolemaic period of Egyptian history. And it's very, very immersive. So yeah, shout out to Emily Holloman. She's fantastic, really good author. But
I
yeah,
will
if you want the
check it
historical
out.
side, then Sophia is a
Because
good place to
there's so
start.
much about her that's I mean complete fiction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But
Yeah, there's a
in
lot of
in
a
your
lot of stuff
podcast,
about Cleopatra's fiction.
oh, Campbell Price, hello.
Hey, Campbell, long time. How's it going? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining, Campbell. We should do a chat sometime as well.
Yeah, we should all do a chat sometime, actually. That'll be
We should
fantastic.
do a big, can we do a group chat on here? I don't know.
I think we can do it on Zoom, and then we can
On
broadcast it. If
exactly.
Campbell and Sophia are up for it, we'll get 4 of us on a Zoom chat. That'll be great.
Should be very
Look at that.
interesting.
You popped in to see what's going on, and then we're roping you into stuff without you even answering. Sorry about that,
He's
Campbell.
like in the Scottish accent. Where's the in button?
Hey, he's up for it. Great. Fantastic. And so is Sophia. Perfect. There you go. We'll have a round table. That'll be awesome.
Exactly. Square table because it's kind of all virtual
Yeah,
on a
well,
phone.
yeah, square table. But none of us are
Rectangle.
squares. So,
But in your podcasts, you talk a lot about Egyptian religion
mhm.
and Kemeticism
Yeah. Yep.
and things like that. And I actually watched an interview with you today on YouTube where you spoke about looking into these things.
Yeah.
Explain to me how you got interested in that side of things.
Wow. I had an interest in the occult and in magic and in esoterica since I was very young, and partly because I was hugely into kind of fantasy and things like that, and partly because I just thought, well, there's this entire side of reality that the ancients believed in, and I want to understand more about that. So I started studying all kinds of stuff when I was younger, including I was reading stuff by like Crowley and the Golden Dawn to begin with, and I thought this doesn't feel very authentically Egyptian. And I would be more than happy to send you a copy if I can get my publishers to agree to it, Campbell. I'm sure that would be very worth their while. Remind me, and I will email them. So, long story short, I'd been studying. I say studying. I'd been reading around the subject for many years, and that was everything on the eclectic end. So, like Tamaran and Egyptian style Wicca and paganism, and then to the more kind of the ritual magic that the ceremonial magic that like people like the Golden Dawn were doing, and looking at the rituals that the Freemasons were using. And I thought a lot of this stuff is an interpretation of things told to us by the Greeks and the Romans. It's stuff that's come through Plutarch. It's stuff that's come through Herodotus. It's stuff that's come through Sethos by Terrason and the Golden Ass and things like that. And you start seeing
And
these.
we know Herodotus made up a lot of. We know Herodotus made up a lot of what he wrote.
Yeah, or didn't have very reliable sources. You know, I mean, he was told that the pyramids were covered in produce, details about produce. You know, it was crazy times. So he only had what he was told to rely on. And I thought, whilst I was kind of reading around the subject, I thought there must be groups who are more interested in what was going on actually in Egypt rather than what we've been told about Egypt since. And that's when, yeah, that's when I started. I found the Kemetic groups online before I'd even gone back to uni to do the master's degree, and started reading around that then. I had studied with a guy in South London back in the, I want to say the late 90s or the early noughts, who was this kind of almost Sufi-esque character who was really into the spiritual and religious side of Egyptian culture. And so I thought, well, let's go and learn the Egyptology properly first, and then let's apply an academic study to this stuff. And I'd come across the Kemetics online, like I say, and I started approaching the community and saying, look, I was very explicit about who I was. I learned the ethics of doing ethnographies and, you know, anthropology, and I thought, I'm going to be clear about who I am and what I'm doing. Is anyone willing to speak with me about this so that I can represent you authentically and respectfully? And so that was my approach the whole way through. I thought that was really important. And eventually, after about a year of me being on the scene and talking with people, and initially people being understandably suspicious about what I was doing, I think people started to realize, particularly people who had spoken to me in person, started to realize I'm not here to catch anyone out or misrepresent you or tear down what you're doing. I'm here to understand what you're doing and see. And this is where the crux of it is. I wanted to see like how, if we're using the same resources, and in many cases we are using the same resources as the Kemetics, or Kemetics are using the same resources as Egyptologists, as well as Egyptological resources based on those primary sources. And so I thought, if we're using all the same stuff, where do we draw the line between where Egyptology ends and religion, the study and reconstruction of religion, begins? Where does phenomenology in archaeology end, which is the practice of putting yourself in the shoes of the ancients and reconstructing their world, trying to understand their perspective from the perspective of someone who's practicing that religion, and someone who's practicing that religion using archaeological sources? And I thought, this is too good, this is too rich. There has to be so many avenues of research here that are being done in these communities by these very academic people who have access to all these resources, many of whom understand hieroglyphs better than I do. And that's just how the Kemetic kind of stuff evolved for me. I just became really absorbed in their world and their books and their practices, and yeah, that became the PhD and eventually became the book Profane Egyptologists.
Yeah, that's very interesting, you know, because the religion of the Egyptians, it's not like set in stone. It's not boom and that's how they did it. It evolved. The different periods, things changed. They adopted other gods. So you can't just look at it and, like you said, you can't just go, I'm going to take it from that source. You have to look at everything.
Yeah, it's a very, and some people take a broad approach to that, and they'll incorporate lots of different gods and different ritual into, so you've got like places like, so the House of Necha, Kemetic Orthodoxy, they're like the highest profile, and they have their own particular approach, and it's kind of in the middle of where you would have, it's revivalist but not strictly reconstructionist, in the sense that they use aspects of other traditional African traditional religions to fill in the blanks sometimes where they're missing something. And then you have at the more kind of, I'd say, conservative reconstructionist academic side of that spectrum, you have people like the Kemetic Temple of Ra and the Kemetic Temple of San Jose. And they've got two wonderful books written by the late Richard Reedy, may he rest in peace. And these are fantastic. I mean, they're using academic resources to reconstruct rituals and translating them, but not just translating the words spoken, translating all the movements and gestures and how this comes together as a religious practice for someone in the world today. So if you want to kind of get an eye on what they're doing, there's Eternal Egypt and the newer one, the name escapes me at the moment, it will come back to me, but Eternal Egypt was the first book. And yeah, so you've got these different approaches depending on where people are on the spectrum.
Eternal Egypt, was that not the name of one of Joe Fletcher's documentaries?
Yeah, I think it's been used a few times in a few different contexts. But oh, I think my friend Rachel just joined. Hey, Rachel. Hi. Yeah, you can kind of get a good idea of, and I think the key takeaway for me was that these aren't, previously a lot of Egyptologists would look at people practicing Egyptian religion and kind of scoff and go, well, that's not even Egyptian religion. And the thing I took away from this was actually it's recognizable to an Egyptian. That was the kind of litmus test to me. Would this be recognizable to an ancient Egyptian? And the answer by the end of the study is yes, it absolutely would. Even if the language varies, they would recognize what's going on here, undoubtedly. So,
you know,
yeah.
I last year when I was in, where was it? When I was in Sicily, I met a French woman, and she was telling me about a ritual that they would do in this little town. I think it was Ischia, or no, that's the island. There's some hot spring. And what they used to do is, she was telling me, once a year they would take the statue of the Virgin Mary and place her on a boat, on a bark. And there would be priests carrying her all the way down to the ocean. And then they would pour water over the statue and walk her back. And apparently the street was lined and people were throwing offerings and things like that to the Virgin Mary. And then I said to her, but you know, this sounds a lot like the Festival of Opet in Egypt, where, you know, they carried the statues out on the barks. And we got into a whole conversation where she was saying, no, but you know, it's totally different. And I thought, well, you know what? Religions do have a tendency to borrow things and evolve together.
Yeah.
So when I heard about this festival, I thought, well, you know what? This sounds like someone from Egypt came over in the Ptolemaic period and went to Sicily with the Greeks, and somehow this stuck, you know, in the late period.
Absolutely. I mean, the Isis religion was being exported at such a rate and volume by the Greek period. I mean, the Greeks, there's a really good PhD paper by Fortmeyer, and she looks at the festivals and tries to figure out different aspects of the festivals and how they worked based on kind of the some of the leftovers from Greek tourists, essentially. So Greek tourists would go and they would buy
the graffiti,
a little piece of ostraca that they could graffiti, because it was easier to come by, you know, clay and potsherds than it was papyrus, more affordable. So they would buy the ostraca and they would throw them in the path of the procession. And she focused on primarily the you know, the Isis rites and the Osiris, the Assyrian triad. But you know, there's like because that ritual sounds almost exactly like the ritual of Hathor as well, where, you know, she's taken on the bark to meet with Horus and the conjoining of the gods, and so many examples of that, and so many ways that ISIS religion got, I mean, there was an Isium in France. There were Isiums all over Rome. It was huge. So yeah,
Yeah,
and Sicily being part of that, a big part of that at one point. Um,
exactly. And Pompeii, uh, uh, Grecia Magna, it
mm,
was all sort of this combination. And I believe in the house of Fawn in Pompeii. I took pictures of the remains, which is in the museum now. And I was looking at these and going, well, here's a cobra, here's a crocodile, here's an ibis. I have a feeling this person was from Egypt. And when I said
mm,
that, people were like, oh, you're crazy. I'm like, but no, seriously, it's very possible because of people from Greece, Egypt moving there. We know they worship similar gods, Isis.
yeah,
So
and
these things
that
have
was
a tendency.
it was quite common. It was quite common certainly between kind of 300 BC and 300 AD, roughly.
Yeah.
I mean, there was still stuff going on. Obviously,
And pretty soon we're going to be talking about AC
yeah, yeah.
after COVID. Um, so I I worked as a video game reviewer for a year. I do not play video games. I only
That must
played
have
the
been
Harry
difficult.
Potter video game. But working as a video game reviewer, it was kind of fun because I got to play things like Assassin's Creed, which is set in
Mm,
Egypt.
I love that
Um,
game.
that was fun, but it's not my forte. But I know you were involved with a Sega project. You did little
Yeah.
documentaries, advising, and things like that. So I want to know more.
Yeah, that was really lucky actually that I got on board with that. They were doing their Total War series, which is obviously hugely based on historical events, and I got brought in to work on two projects with them. So I was writing the documentaries, mini documentaries that were used to kind of coincide with the release of the games to talk about the history that related to. In one case, it was Attila when they did their Attila expansion, and the next one was Charlemagne. And so I went away and did lots of homework on Attila and Charlemagne respectively, and wrote mini documentaries for them, which I ended up being the presenter for. And they were really good fun, really good fun. And I mean they're fun games, but it's they take a bit too much time for me to really get into. I tend to play more pick up and put down games, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so interesting. And working on those documentaries, did you find yourself hearing facts that they were giving you and going, well, that's not correct. Let's correct that.
With those two, I think I did all of the research on both. I believe. But that's that's generally an exception. You'll usually find with, for instance, with television networks and production companies when they're putting together historical shows. And I know a few of the people in the audience will know this very well. Their researchers will send a bunch of stuff, and most of the time it's fine. Most of the time the researchers are on the ball and they give you good information, but you always have to double check just in case a date is wrong or a name is slightly wrong or it's an older theory and we have better information available in the last few years that hasn't been put into the public realm yet. That's the key difference usually. It'll be, oh, actually, we've got newer research on this thing. Maybe we
It's
should
always
incorporate that.
changing.
Exactly.
That's the thing. I believe when they make documentaries, a lot of the time they don't put a year. And I think at the beginning of the documentary, they should have a little notice that says the facts in this documentary are correct as of blah, blah,
Mm,
blah. Then,
mm. That would be a really good
because
disclaimer. That's a great idea.
things change.
Yeah.
I mean, someone will watch a documentary. I know one of my neighbors will watch a documentary and then she'll come here and then she'll tell me, oh, I watched this documentary and they said this.
Mm.
And I'm like, Actually, we've got new research, and that's oh, but it was on TV.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Let me just quickly say hi to Jessica. Grazie, Jessica, per guardare noi. Ah, Jessica, yes, so important. Usually there are no date and you can't tell info. And that is correct, Jessica.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting better
So,
at it.
yeah, no, they are. They are.
Mm.
I mean, luckily now they do say, excavating in January 2020, they found
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's about the shelf life of a TV show as well, because they want a TV show to be able to do the rounds for a few years. Um, so that's why you tend to get some quite generalist kind of stuff, some quite fuzzy stuff in there. But
Especially in South Africa, we get everything so late compared to the rest of the world. By the time we
right,
get it at Geo, it's like 5 years old.
wow, oh
Mm,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I kind of have that problem in the sense that I don't have cable and I never have, and I don't generally carry any of the channels of anything I've ever been on, so I never get to see them until someone kind like Sophia sends me a link to something and goes, "Hey, it's here if you want to watch it," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks, I've never seen this show," so that way I get to see if I was any good or not in these things, and if I made an ass of myself or not. But
No,
yeah,
you
I
didn't.
prepare a lot.
No.
I do a lot of preparation. You have to.
Good. You have to. Sophia's
Mm.
laughing. I just want to say to everyone that Instagram usually cuts a live video after 1 hour. So if we cut off after 1 hour, I'm just going to restart so we can finish up because we have a few more questions and we'll take questions from people watching. So everyone start getting your questions ready. But in case we do cut off in like the next minute.
All right.
I am
Okay.
so okay. Question. Okay. Yes. So your logo on Profane Egyptologist,
Yeah.
it looks very similar to Indiana Jones, and I can't help but notice that your name also ends Harrison.
It does
Are
indeed.
you any are you any chance related to Indiana Jones?
I am not adverse to uh, making that connection work subtly in the mind of the viewer. I figure so many people are they come to archaeology and Egyptology through the pop culture, and I figure a good way for us to cross the bridge, so to speak, and try and communicate is to use those references, use those reference points culturally to our advantage to say, hey, you're into this stuff. Well, let's talk about the real thing. Let's because it's just as interesting. Usually, it's just as exciting.
It's relatable,
Um, yeah.
recognizable.
So yeah, exactly, making it credible. So yeah, so I will leverage pop culture if and when, and also because I love this stuff. You know, I grew up watching Indiana Jones and playing Tomb Raider games and reading, you know, this about this stuff. And yeah, I figure if I'm going to be
Which Tomb
creating
Raider game did
content,
you play? The one where she had the points?
all of them. I played all of them. I love Laura. Let's see. I played all the old PlayStation ones back in the day, showing my age now, and and then I played the soft reboot trilogy, Legend and Anniversary, and then I tried to play the new ones, and that kind of lost me there. And I don't want to start a flame war between different Tomb Raider fandoms or anything, but it's just a very different game. It's not that's not the character I grew up playing, and very different gameplay as well. So I'm not big on shooting games. I'm just not good at them. I'm better with other things than those. So
Your dad
your
looks
dad
like
looked like
Sean
Sean.
Connery. Is that correct?
That's weird because my dad also looked like Sean Connery, and yeah, and we joke about that sometimes. But he really wants to be Bond. Does your dad want to be Bond, Campbell? Is the question because mine has a bad case of that. Must run in the family, I guess.
I would say, if I had to say who my dad looked like, he kind of looked like, what's that actor with the big mustache? What's his name?
I'm curious now.
Um, no, not Sam Elliott. He's too ugly. Um, he's got black hair. He was in Friends.
Come again?
He was in Friends. He has black hair. He dated Monica in Friends.
Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck. There we go.
Tom Selleck. That's great. Another Indiana Jones connection, because he was nearly Indiana Jones and he couldn't do it because of Magnum PI.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go. There we go.
Terry,
Tom
yes.
Selleck. Yeah, you got it. You win the prize.
I always like look at Terry for facts. She is like such a brain box. She studied English and classics and everything. So I used to work with
Brilliant.
Terry. So
Oh, fantastic. Sophia says her dad looked like Omar Sharif. That's awesome.
well, that's a good one.
That's a really good one.
That's a very good one, Sophia. We should all like dress up as them someday. Sophia, we can't have you as Omar Sharif. You have to go as someone prettier.
Yeah, definitely.
But
Okay.
okay.
Do not adjust your sets. We are going nowhere. We will be back.
Okay, so this is part 2 of the chat. Hello, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you to the newsroom for those messages. Okay. Hi, Sophia. Hi, Anwar. Anwar works at the Gem. He's part of the restoration team.
Oh, fantastic.
Working on I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I saw it on his Facebook. I can say it. On a second Khufu ship.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yes. You guys look fabulous.
Jealous.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you, Sophia. You always look fabulous.
She does. She's got the best hair.
So true.
So I have a few sort of quick fire questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Born ready, Curtis.
Okay. What is your favorite place you have visited in Egypt?
Philae.
Okay. What is
Yeah.
your favorite place out of Egypt?
Ooh, Canada.
Canada, specifically?
Yeah, Canada. Well, I've only really been to the west coast of Canada, but I love it there, and also British Columbia. Yeah, British Columbia and Washington State, I think, that's all kind of very similar landscape, but gorgeous. Love it.
Yeah. It is beautiful. I mean, if you've watched Anne of the Green Gables on Netflix,
I have not, but I guess I should.
watch it. You will love it. You will love it. I first saw the adult. What is this? I loved it. Okay.
Okay.
Next question. Favorite artifact?
This is really tough, and I had to really kind of rack my brain for this, but I think if I was just going to pick one, like if it was one thing that I could have a perfect replica of, it would be the statue of Horus that's currently in the Louvre. I think you know the one I mean, the anthropomorphic statue of Horus, where he's standing in the form of a man with a falcon's head, hands raised. Beautiful statue.
Is that part of the pair with him and Set?
I don't know actually if there's a paired one for Set. I just know of the single statue. I did see another one actually that was at the Sunken Cities exhibition, which was an Apis bull, which was incredible, absolutely incredible. Sometimes when studying the ancient religion and studying people who reconstruct the ancient religion, they'll say to me, I'll be like, how did you come to this god, or how did you come to this religion? And they'll say, I had this encounter. I was viewing a statue and it felt like it spoke to me. When I saw the Apis bull at the Sunken Cities, I had a very, I guess, similar kind of encounter in that it had such presence as and this is a large, large sculpture, but it had such presence and it was so realistic, and I was like, wow, this thing feels like it could just get up and move. Incredible. But yeah, of all time, I think possibly the Horus falcon from the Louvre. It's a beautiful thing. I'll put a picture of it up after this.
Please, I'd like to see it because I've not been to the Louvre, so I need to see it.
Wonderful place, wonderful place.
I'm sure. I mean, they've got how many artifacts?
I,
Thousands.
it's huge. Their Egyptology, their Egyptian section alone takes at least a day, several really, if you're going to do it
Yeah,
justice.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have you had a look at the 12th dynasty death masks with the
Oh,
full beard?
only recently well, I say recently, only in books. I've seen them. I've seen them before, but I got to be honest with you, I just wasn't very present for it when I did, and that just happens sometimes. You're like, there's so much material. You're looking at so much material, and you just can't take in every detail. I'm sure.
You have to focus on a certain time period in Egypt, I feel.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly easier to. I've always tried to be a generalist, but I find I have to. I restudy as much of Egyptian history as I can, pretty much every year, because there's so much information to hold and keep in place to keep
And you just
context.
forget names and you forget places and you're like, oh my God, I
And
know, but
I'm
I can't.
exactly. I'm not good with names to begin with, so yeah, I have to restudy
And the
all the time.
Egyptian names are even worse.
There are so many. Well, and kings having five names does not help. Like
Yeah,
does not help.
yeah. Six if you count the Greek name.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Because I get so confused sometimes, they'll talk and they'll talk about a pharaoh and they're giving the Greek name and I'm going,
Yeah.
who the hell is that?
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started on the whole Cheops, Mycerinus, all this stuff. I have to just, I can't deal with the Greek names on top. It's too much.
Yeah.
I have to
I had
focus
a
on the
conversation
Egyptian.
with someone once and I said something about the Great Pyramid of Khufu. And they were like,
Mm.
no, 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 no. Khufu didn't build it. Cheops built it.
Yeah.
And I have like, it's the same person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite Egyptian god?
First Egyptian god I really became, well, there were two I first became interested in. That was Horus and Bast. And I do have a attraction to the falcon deities, so Horus and Khonsu, Ra, obviously.
So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Sokka, and so many have. It's like you said earlier. You said it exactly right earlier. There are so many times where a god is not necessarily discrete, or a religious practice is not that discrete, and you can't say this is just Khonsu because it's Khonsu in the form of it's a young young Horus, or pre-kingship Horus is sometimes represented alongside with Khonsu. So, but those deities in particular strike an archetypal chord for me, as well as the cat deities. But I'm a bit of an animal lover. Yeah,
okay. Okay. That's interesting. Mine, I would have to say, is Amun.
Amun.
Uh,
Okay,
I just have this thing. I don't know why.
is it because he's
Find him.
hidden? You have to search.
I think so. And I think maybe because he reflects in a lot of different religions, very similar stories, creation stories.
Hmm. Hmm.
I find him very, very, very interesting and
And he's
similar to the other.
one of the eight primordials as well. So potentially one of the oldest Egyptian deities there is.
Exactly, exactly. So I am going to ask anybody now who's online if you have any questions for Mr. not Mr. Dr. Paul Harrison.
But be kind.
Um, I have to say that I was talking when I was creating my Nefertari documentary.
Hmm.
I was working with Nigel to get people on board to speak about Nefertari, and John J. Johnson said that he would like to appear in it. And I thought, okay, this is great,
I
but
love
I
John.
didn't I didn't know him like I've seen him on TV. Um, and we've got similar friends, but I didn't know him.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
every time I emailed him, because it said Dr. John J. Johnson. So I was like, hi, Dr. Johnson, blah, 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 blah. And I think after like 5 emails, he emailed me back. He's like, stop it. Just John. Yeah, it's,
We
I
were,
always try and be helpful.
John and I were actually in our masters. We were in the masters degree together, and oh, thank you, Sophia. Presentation course I teach. Yeah, the presentation course. We touched on it very briefly, how I came to it. The course itself, basically, at the moment, it's all online. So usually I would do workshops where I would turn up and it would be like a workshop for anywhere between 5 and 10 people. And we would go through different aspects of presenting, different skill sets, the breathing, posture, or the practical skills, and then some of the more technical skills. So how to read from an auto cue, for instance, how to memorize lines, how to do this, that, and the other, how you should address the camera. And then we do some of the more technical stuff I cover some of the sides of filmmaking so people understand the context of being on camera and how that all works. And long story short, that's all gone online. And we have, I'm offering that with Nigel, or with Past Preservers, through Past Preservers at the moment. And then it's all going through Zoom, basically, and I will give you tuition on how to be on camera and how to shine.
I think that's a very helpful skill to know how to be on camera.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had no guidance when I started, and I was just fumbling my way through until I went to actual presenter classes and acting classes and started working in film and actually realizing, oh, this is how a camera, because a lot of people don't realize how a camera captures you and how you have to alter your behavior quite significantly for certain types of shot. And that
the voice that has to, you kind of have to be a little bit over dramatic with the voice so that it comes across not all, I'm so tired of life.
Exactly. We have to bring in all this additional enunciation, but we also have vocal exercises and things like that as well. We do, but it's there are lots of little pointers.
That I'm not doing that on purpose, as you can see. It just goes up on its own. For some reason, when there's a camera on me and I'm talking to someone, it's like,
It's fine.
And there's no way to bring it down. That's why I do this quite often. But I see Troy. Troy had a question that was up to do with wheels and chariots. So I couldn't quite understand the question, Troy, but I'm going to try and interpret it. Basically, I think it was about the Egyptians didn't have a wheel, and then suddenly we see a pharaoh on a chariot with a wheel. How did a wheel arrive in Egypt?
So a lot of the technology for the chariot and subsequently the use of those kinds of wheeled things came from invasion. I think the first lot was the Hyksos, if I remember rightly. Oh, hello.
So Ayman, hi Ayman. Ayman is the overseer of Deir al-Medina.
Oh wow!
He took us into the tombs when I was there shooting Expedition Egypt with Sharon Haig.
Oh, I watched that. That was great.
Thank you. There's a quick shot of Ayman in the documentary. I see we have a special guest joining us. I believe his name is
hi Nigel.
Hetherington.
Hey Nigel, how you doing?
Mr. Past Preservers, hello.
Hello.
Yes, so I don't know if we should try and answer that question about the wheel because it doesn't seem to want to get answered.
It doesn't, does it? I wasn't sure if I'd been cut off or not, so I started talking about how various things in ancient Egypt were imports. So horses and chariots were imports from invading forces. And long story short, we've got evidence of trade all the way back to the pre-dynastic period, which is where we see certain stones and certain colors starting to appear that you could only get from other places like Afghanistan, for instance. So they were clearly trading very, very, very early.
They were. And I mean, I was looking at a bracelet, a gold and lapis bracelet. Um, I've got the Tutankhamun book by Zahi Hawass and
Hmm.
Sandro Vanini. And, you know, when I get bored, I just open the book and look at the beautiful things and absorb.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and there was a bracelet in there, and it had, you know, the Greek ocean swirls. It's a
Yes.
very typical Grecian border, and
Hmm.
that was
Yep.
around the bracelet. And I'm like, how has no one written that he's got Greek artifacts in his tomb?
Mm. Yeah, I mean there were entire cities of Greek soldiers at certain stages, and the Egyptians used mercenary armies at certain stages, especially in their more expansionist kind of eras. Of course, they wouldn't. That the Egyptians weren't really an empire in the way that we understand it because they didn't want to colonize. No one wanted to die outside Egypt. If you died outside Egypt, you had to be brought back to be buried. It was the worst thing,
Exactly.
really, to die outside Egypt and be buried somewhere that wasn't sacred, like Kemet. So yeah, they weren't super expansionist in that sense, but the trade incredible, and the mercenary armies from both the north, the Mediterranean basin, and from the south. The archers, Nubian archers, were particularly renowned. So yeah, lots of contacts with loads of cultures.
Lots of contact. And I mean, even just if we go back to the Nefertari documentary, which I just made, while I was
Yeah.
making it, um, I actually I know everyone talks about Nefertari having the silver Greek earrings, but I never actually had a chance to see a silver Greek earring with the clip at the back, with the dome in the front. So I
Yeah.
started searching and I actually found several examples of the exact same earrings that we see her wearing in the tomb.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, because
And they're all
I asked a
contemporaneous.
couple of people, have they seen these? Because we just talk about it, but no one's seen the earrings.
Hmm.
So I actually found some Greek earrings. So it's actually so interesting when you see the trade, and I mean the trade with the East, like India and things like that. I
Yeah.
mean, Tut's perfume had, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Spicard plant in the perfume, and that only grows in India.
Fascinating. So somewhere there was
Yeah.
a trade route there being developed.
Somewhere, somehow, something happened. Um,
That's really interesting because we don't think about contact with India really until Alexander the Great, do we, in the Ptolemaic era?
not at all. I mean,
Mm.
and if we look at chess, I believed was developed in India.
Hmm. I did not know that.
Yeah. And what does chess remind you of in terms of Egypt?
Oh, their game. Yes,
Senate.
Senate. Yeah,
Yes. It's
yeah.
so similar, um,
Mm.
apart from the board being long and thin, but the idea of the black and white pieces with the black and white board, I just have such a feeling that that was taken to India somehow through the Egyptians with trade, and then the Indians took that and adapted that.
Interesting. I mean, I always try to be cautious, obviously, with the whole kind of similarity and influence thing, and trying not to.
I'm just like sprouting ideas here. So no one write this
I try
down.
to be very cautious with influence, because obviously there is a certain approach to Egypt which would have us believe that the Egyptians influenced the South Americans and stuff like that. And obviously, it is. There are just certain
No.
ways. Exactly, there are certain ways the human mind works. In certain ways, it you know manages to overcome challenges in very similar ways in different eras and different places around the world. And obviously, we have to be careful not to assume any influence there, simply because there are some very basic um, well, it's just the brain, isn't it? Really, it's the brain and physics. They're universal to a degree.
Yeah, yeah. I see. Okay, talking about, okay, yes, the connection, things are, similarities are inevitable. That's true. Um, We just said that, so thank you, the Himalayan Institute.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting intellectual exercise to look at different things from around the world and see how they approach those things similarly,
Yeah, yeah.
particularly
And
when it
in the
opens up
interview that
avenues.
I watched with you today, you were talking about uh,
Such
it's
knife
just
was made of iron. Yes.
that's true. Yeah. Um, you were talking about people and their misconception, and they have a preconceived idea of Egypt before they arrive there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
before we end the chat, what is the one piece of advice you could give people who have got this image expectation of Egypt and they go there and it's not exactly what they expected? For me, I watched The Mummy and I expected Egypt to look, with like the Moroccan borders and all that stuff, and I didn't see that.
Yes. Yes, of course. Yeah. We have a lot of fantasy. We have a very fantastic idea of Egypt through pop culture. And it's obviously very wise to bear in mind that the archaeology is very um oh, we're back. We are in fashion. There we are. There we are.
Yes. Wi-Fi went off again, and I just needed to get a charger.
Okay, no problem.
Hi.
Welcome back.
What were we saying about the misconceptions that people
Expectations.
have?
Yeah, yeah. So it's very easy. It's very easy for people to be exposed to various misconceptions about ancient Egypt and how the pyramids were built. And we've got shows like Ancient Aliens, which is hugely popular, and I don't know why, but mystery is more intriguing to the brain than reality. Reality takes work to learn and uncover, and it's a very studious process, and that's not as sexy or as exciting as saying, oh, but what if it was 50,000 years old and this was really a lion first and this was blah 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 blah. The truth is the archaeology of Egypt is fascinating, hard work. Um, so I would say go into Egypt with try to have
Open
no
mind.
expectations, an open mind, exactly, and zero expectations. And exactly, yeah, you will find that Egypt is a challenging place in some ways. It's very busy. It's always very busy, and if you're not into crowds, that can be tough. But it's remarkable, and the temples there are remarkable. And this is the story of human ingenuity and the beginnings of civilization as we understand it. So
Yeah,
to honor it and try to understand it on its own terms is I think the most charitable thing that we can do for that civilization.
for sure, for sure. I mean, as Nigel's company says, past preservers, we are out here to inform people and not only preserve artifacts and things, but almost preserve memories of the
Mm,
past. And
mm,
I know you said in an interview that I saw that we're not gatekeepers,
yeah,
which is
yeah, and neither is really true. So did we have a bit of a glitch there? I was just saying that some people will have a preconception of Egyptologists being these very stuffy conservatives or being Indiana Jones, and the truth is somewhere in between. It's neither of those things are really true, but the truth is somewhere in between. And
yeah,
we are by and large, as a culture of people generally open to good ideas and not trying to just keep people misinformed about the past because we're attached to it that way. We are
yeah,
always trying to uncover new information and reevaluate theories. And there's a whole generation of new blood out there that's looking at Egypt with fresh eyes and coming up with some fantastic stuff and building on the work of previous generations of Egyptologists. So approach Egyptologists and archaeologists with an open heart and try not to disparage if it doesn't sound like what you've heard from Graham Hancock, because these people are working very hard to understand the past on its own merits.
mhm. It's so true. And like you said, we're trying, there's a whole new group of people becoming interested. I had a Skype call with Nigel once, and I told him, I said, you know, my idea is to inspire a younger generation to become interested in history because there's so many people my age or even younger that
Hmm.
don't give a about Egyptology, history in general. Um, you know, it's all about like, oh, let's take a selfie, let's look pretty, using like, yeah,
We're in a bit of a ontological crisis, an information age crisis, where there's a lot of bad information that gets spread very quickly, and it's harder to counter it with good information and kind of rigorous scholarship. And finding that path of least resistance between good scholarship and information dissemination, I think, is the job of everyone working in this field now to a degree, but especially the new guys. Like there are the guys that are coming up now, guys and girls, I should say, um, are so media savvy. They're so good. They've already got their own podcast. They've got their own shows. They're just out there doing it. They're not waiting for a network to, come and take them on and put them on TV. They're just out there communicating their fields and being advocates for archaeology and Egyptology and history. And it's fantastic. It's a real democracy now of voices, and it's just breaking
it does
through.
have its negatives and positives, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. It's the good with the bad. We just got to try and
yeah,
keep up with the bad.
exactly, exactly. But you know, Paul, this was so much fun chatting to you, even through all the technical
Even with the
stuff.
chaos, it was a great thing. Thank you, Curtis. It's been my pleasure.
And I
Absolute
was
pleasure to
so
talk.
hoping, thank you. I was so hoping tonight there would be no technical issues. Um, Last week we had a power outage, so I was sitting here with like a battery powered lamp trying to get like online using my phone's data. And then
Yeah.
today we're like, no planned power outages. The Wi-Fi is working. I even texted the guys. So we're working on it. It got better this time. We had electricity.
Right, that's right. It's a good start. Well, thank you, and thank you to everyone for bearing with us through the various technicals as well.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
But Paul, that was so much fun. And as we said, we should set up something with Sophia and Campbell. So is it Roger or is
Yeah.
it Campbell?
Roger Campbell Price, Campbell Roger Price. Campbell uses them in different orders in different places. So
Okay, Campbell Price. We'll go for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
That was
Yeah,
the
we should
last
set
credit
something
I
up.
saw of him on TV.
Yeah, yeah, just use that.
Yeah. Cool. So we'll set something up sometime. I'm sure it'll be fun.
Excellent. That sounds great. That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure diving into your world and looking at your documentaries. You're doing wonderful
Thank
work, as I
you. Thank
mentioned
you.
before. So everyone out there, go and check out his documentaries. They're on YouTube. You can find them. They're on Amazon. Go check out this guy's work right here. He's great.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. And everyone, go check out Paul's work. Go check out the podcast. Go check out the books. You can find him on Instagram at Profane Podcast.
Yeah,
So check him out. And Paul, again, thank you so much. That was so much fun. It was so nice getting to know you. And
my
I hope
pleasure.
we chat again soon.
Thank you, one and all. Good night.
Thank you. And keep up the good work.
I will. You too.
I'll try. Bye.